There's a lot of talk about the 2012 leadership transition in China between the fourth generation, the outgoing leadership now under Hu Jintao, and the incoming fifth generation leadership that is supposedly going to be under Xi Jinping. And while there are notable differences in the leadership between the fourth and the fifth generation, one thing remains the same. Both generations want to maintain the unity of the Chinese Communist Party. With the fifth generation and the incoming leadership, we're going to expect them to be less homogeneous than we've seen in the past. That is to say that their academic, professional backgrounds are going to be varied. This potentially could lead to new tensions within the government and how to govern. This brings us to the second notable difference, and that is there are more tensions both internal and externally to China that this leadership is going to have to deal with. And this leads to a debate on how exactly these two different types of leaderships are going to manage the new social, political, and economic pressures. These debates are most visible between the two factions. The first faction is under Hu Jintao. This is called generally the populist faction. And the populist faction is characterized by people who were mainly in the Chinese Communist Youth League that was at one time run by Hu Jintao. The populist faction is namely characterized by strong leadership, strong central government, and this idea of redistributing the wealth. This is in contrast to the elitist faction that is typically seen as being headed by the former president, Jiang Zemin. This is also called, in quote-unquote, the Shanghai clique. This group of elitists really want to see the maintenance of Chinese economic power as driven by exports and mainly centered on the coast. The necessary compromises between these groups that needs to be made to maintain a workable balance to ensure the unity of the Chinese Communist Party leads to a government that is namely reactive versus proactive, and that we're going to see transfer from the fourth generation leadership to the fifth generation leadership. And we add to this mix the military. We've seen the military's influence increase for several reasons. First of which is its maintaining internal security. And recently we've seen numerous natural disasters and political upsets in Xinjiang and Tibet, where the military has played an increasingly more proactive and visible role in China. Add to this the need for China to maintain supply lines, particularly for their energy and their raw imports. And the military, in particular, has played an increasingly more important role. And most recently, we've seen China rely on the military to defend its sovereignty claims in both the South China Sea and the East China Sea. And we've seen the military become more aggressive in policymaking in both of these areas. Ultimately, the civilian leadership will be able to maintain its control of the military, but its rising influence is something to note in the transition in 2012.